What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We're back doing another preview video for the World Cup warm-ups. This one is for Ireland versus England, a really big game going on this week. We're going to be taking a look at the teams that have been announced to play in this game, some thoughts on the teams themselves, having a look at a few stats, some thoughts on how we think this game might go, and finally, of course, giving a score prediction. If you enjoy this style of video, make sure to drop it a like, and if you want to see more rugby videos on YouTube, make sure to support the small content creators who like talking a little bit about rugby. Hit that subscribe button, help us out. Let's try and get to as many subscribers as we can before we get to the fantastic Rugby World Cup this year. Now, on the channel, we've also already done Wales versus the Springboks and France versus Fiji. Those preview videos are already out. You can go check those ones out after this one if you haven't already. So Ireland versus England, two teams coming into this game in real different ways. Ireland seem to just be doing brilliantly at just about everything. England last week played Wales in just a bizarre game. We had 6 yellow cards in the game, 1 red card. Can we say that anymore? Not a red card, a yellow card. Or it might be a red card because there's a lot of switching going on. Of course, Farrell got his red card in that game. It's been overturned, in case you're the only person in the world who apparently hasn't heard about it. I made a video going over the overturn of the red card. I thought it might be a little bit funny just to have it on the channel. A couple of people might enjoy it. It turned out to be the 3rd most viewed video ever on the channel. So you guys love a bit of controversy. It set the world on fire, and currently World Rugby is looking at maybe overturning the overturn. So we've had to wait a little bit of time for the England squad to get named for this one, which is why this one ended up being the final preview video. Now, these two teams, of course, met in the Six Nations. Ireland took that one 29 points to 16. Certainly a convincing scoreline. In the last 5 matches, Ireland have won 3, England have won 2, but the most recent 3, Ireland have won all 3. So since 2021, Ireland have won 100% of these games. So Ireland certainly going in with a lot of confidence. England have still got a lot of areas to improve on. While the scrum, line out and maul certainly improved in that game against Wales last week, their discipline and the amount of cards and just penalties that didn't need to be given away will really be hanging over them. So discipline this week will be the number one key factor they'll probably be looking to improve going into this week. So starting out then with the Ireland team. Ireland have announced a pretty big team. It's almost the starting Ireland team, I would probably say, having a quick glance at it. There's only a couple of changes here from being, the number 1 starting Ireland team. I think you put Caelan Doris on at 8, and maybe you have Sexton in at 10 in the fly half, and you've pretty much got there the starting Ireland team I can see playing in like a World Cup final. It's about as good as the Ireland team gets, so England will have to keep their eyes peeled for this one, because oh man, I think Ireland are going to be up to all sorts of nuisance in this game. So starting out in the front row, Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tadhg Furlong, monster front row. This, for me, is the first choice front row for Ireland. I think this is an absolute brilliant pick. Tadhg Furlong, for me, is still up there for, arguably the number 1 tight head in the world. I think he's absolutely superb. Dan Sheehan might even be putting his hand up for the best hooker in the world. I think there's something really special about him. He's absolutely rapid. He's a very sharp player as well. Gets over for tries, not just through driving mauls like a lot of other hookers. He just sometimes finds himself out on the wing, outrunning people. A real nuisance, solid in the line out as well. A really, really good front row for them. In the lock department, Tadhg Beirne going in alongside James Ryan. This is my preferred lock department for Ireland. I think this is about as good as it gets. Tadhg Beirne, an absolute monster, not only in the line out, but in the breakdown. How many times do we see Tadhg Beirne just getting over, ripping the ball out, picking up the jackal or getting a turnover and just giving the ball back to your own team? The breakdown situation's probably one of the best areas for Ireland. They are awesome at the breakdown. The clearing out the rucks, quick to recycle their own ball, but also just to stop everyone else in their tracks by getting over them, getting all those jackal penalties. Tadhg Beirne leading from the front. And then in the back row, Peter O'Mahony goes in the 6th shirt, Josh van der Fleer, an open side flanker, and Cian Prendergast getting in at 8, which, is nice. Caelan Doris is nailed on, right? He's the starting number 8 in the World Cup. He'll be in there at number 8. There's no reason to not give someone else a shot and get some minutes on the pitch. Cian Prendergast, looking forward to see how he gets on at 8, even though I imagine a lot of people will be like, you can't leave Caelan Doris out of a team. I think it's worth the shot. He's already proven what he's going to do. He's on the bench for this game. They haven't even just left him out. They just said, have a bit of a rest for the first half. Come in the 60th minute. Come on wherever you fancy. Come on at 6, 7 or 8, because he's proven he's just about as good everywhere else. In the halfback partnership, Jameson Gibson Park going in alongside of Ross Byrne, getting another crack at this one. Now, Jack Crowley playing fly half against Italy. I was actually really impressed by. He's still a young lad, low on the caps, but I thought really ran that game very nicely from the 10 shirt, with Sexton still out now with his ban until we get to the World Cup. Ross Byrne's your more experienced head, And as a fly half, I've always felt a little bit bad for that he's never had, the opportunity to become like the number one first choice for Ireland, because I do think he's a really good fly half. But I'm looking forward to see some from Jack Crowley. And I think the way that Andy Farrell's been organising the Ireland team through coaching and how they've been organised it for each game has been very, very well done. I wouldn't be surprised if Ross Byrne plays the first half, Jack Crowley comes on in the second half. So they both get 40 minutes against the team to sort of show off what they can get, who's going to be sticking their hand up to get involved with those World Cup games, and in what order they're sort of favourites. In the centre partnership, Bundy Aki goes in alongside Gary Ringrose. We've seen this time and time again. It's a really well-worked partnership. They know how to work together. Really, really solid centre partnership. And then in the back three, James Lowe on the left wing, Mac Hansen on the right wing, and Hugo Keenan in the full back. Again, another one I personally would be saying, he's up there for, one of the best fullbacks in the world, if not the best. Brilliant, just covering the backfield, great under the high ball, and as a supporting fullback, the way Ireland use him, just to be involved with rucks, with breakdowns, get him, all over the park. He's not just sat in the backfield waiting for those recovery kicks. I think he's a solid player. 1 through 15, really good team. Like I said, okay, maybe you'd make those two changes. You might want to say Caelan Doris on at 8 and Sexton on at 10. But, Sexton's not available, and Caelan Doris has done so much. No reason to not give Prendergast a shot. This is about as close as the top tier Ireland team as you can get. In the replacements, Rob Herring, Loughman, and Beelum coming in there as well in that replacement front row. Beelum has been playing well, was playing well throughout the Six Nations, tried to take his shot while Furlong was out for a bit. I still think Furlong would be your number one choice over Finlay Beelum, but he's again another solid player. I'm hoping he gets a bit of game time in here as well, leading towards that World Cup. Rest of the replacement forwards: McCarthy and Caelan Doris, as I've already mentioned along the way there. They've gone for the 5-3. I did think, given how well England set up in the mauls and the scrums last week, it's a little bit tricky because Wales were quite poor. But what England really stepped up last week in terms of the driving maul and stuff, going up against South Africa and Scotland in the World Cup, I thought Ireland might actually really use this game to test their own scrum and test their own maul, and in doing so thought they might lean more towards doing 6-2. Because that way you can get more players in and testing that driving maul, allowing you to test it against a team like England, who seem to be performing very well. I think would actually set you up better for what you can probably expect to experience from like teams like South Africa and their driving maul. But they haven't gone another route. They've gone for the 5-3. Conor Murray, Jack Crowley, and Keith Earls on that bench as well as the replacement backs. So you've got decent coverage there. And in terms of a test match, a 5-3 gives you a bit more leniency around the park. But just thinking ahead towards that World Cup, I might have liked to have seen a 6-2 and really test out those forwards against a driving maul that appeared to be working really well last week for England. So we'll see how they get on. I wouldn't be surprised though if Ireland really do test themselves in that first half. They might even get penalties and say we might go for a scrum and really put themselves up against another top 10 team in the world who seemed to be performing last week very well in the scrum and the driving maul, just to get that practice in before you get to the World Cup, because there's not a lot of games left before you're playing some other teams joining them in the top 5 in the world. Moving on then, let's talk about England. England last week, as I already mentioned, things going wrong for them in a manner of different ways. Some things improved for them. Individual players stepping up last week. Ben Earl had a superb game. I was really, really impressed by him. I thought he had a brilliant game. The scrummaging for England got better than it did the week previously. The mauls got a lot better than they did the week previously. And the line-out was a bit hard to judge because the Wales line-out was actually just so poor. They were throwing the line-out with no one jumping. So, England got a couple of steals in there, but I'm not sure they'll be too happy about stealing a line-out when nobody on the other team jumped. So this will be a much bigger test for this England team, because Ireland have all the areas that Wales were quite poor in last week is sort of the Ireland bread and butter. So this will be a really, really big test for England. And the team goes to reflect that. There's not a lot of changes from the team we got to see against that Wales side, so they'll just want to be improving their discipline along the way. Starting out in the front row then, Ellis Genge, Jamie George, and Will Stewart. So Ellis Genge coming in over Joe Marler this week. Ellis Genge did get his yellow card last week, but not really, directly his fault. He was the one that got yellow carded for numerous penalties on the bounce. He just happened to be the last guy. Felt a little bit unfair. Other than that yellow card, I actually thought he had a pretty decent game. In the lock department, Maro Toje and David Ribbans coming in the number 5 shirt. It was George Martin. I left myself a little note who played last week. So David Ribbans coming in the number 5 shirt. And then in that back row, same as last week, Courtney Laws there as captain this week because Owen Farrell's still not in. Ben Earl in that open side and Billy Vunipola at 8. Billy Vunipola still felt a bit quiet for me. There was a lot of talk about, Don Brandt not getting in this England team going into the World Cup. Billy Vunipola was a bit of a surprise choice for a lot of people. I still didn't really see that much from Billy Vunipola last week. Ben Earl just shone out like an absolute star. I think he played really well, so I'm hoping he continues that into this week. In the halfback partnership, Ben Youngs goes in alongside George Ford. Poor old Portvlet getting his massive ankle injury. What a shame for him. Was really looking forward to see him, have a bit more game time getting in towards that World Cup. And Owen Farrell, of course, as we already mentioned, with the whole red card shenanigans that are going on at the minute. This is an experienced halfback partnership, though. Ben Young's got a lot of caps behind him. George Ford will be relishing the opportunity now to get in that starting 10 shirt, considering, I don't know, about a year ago, he was gone, right? It was Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell. It was just who of those two's playing. So George Ford having a real good shot now to get back in this team, start more games, get yourself involved with that World Cup and show off why you deserve to have that 10 shirt. Needs to make the most of this opportunity. In the centre partnership, Manu Tuilagi goes in alongside Joe Marchant this week. So it is actually Ollie Lawrence to be moved to the bench this week. I had to double check that quickly then. Ollie Lawrence still in the side, but him and Manu Tuilagi bringing very similar styles in terms of just being a massive ball carrier, can crash up straight. Personally, I think I prefer Ollie Lawrence at inside centre. I think he's been playing a better game. I think not only does he run with full power like Manu Tuilagi does, but I think he picks better lines. I think Manu Tuilagi tries to run over people, whereas Ollie Lawrence picks really nice lines where defenders are going to find it hard to tackle you anyway and just uses his side to break the tackles. But the thing with Manu Tuilagi is often like a set piece. If you pass the ball out wide, somebody has to mark him because of what he brings to the team. So he's sort of like a threat without even needing to have the ball. So it's a nice switch up here just to test out, who's going to fit in that centre partnership, especially if Owen Farrell ends up missing the World Cup. You're going to be going for the two dedicated centres. Well worth having the opportunity to let all the centres play with each other. And then in the back three, Elliot Daly on the left wing, Anthony Watson coming in on the right wing, and Freddie Stewart in that fullback shirt. Now, Arundel last week got his yellow card. Really silly decisions, didn't have a great game. So I'm not surprised we're seeing a switch there. It's a real shame because I wanted to see more from him, but that yellow card was always a yellow card, and it was so obviously, just a professional foul. You don't want to be doing that. You're not going to be impressing coaches doing that. Give Anthony Watson a shot here as well. Anthony Watson's also pretty good at when he can get into the air as well. He'll be going up against James Lowe on that wing. We know that James Lowe's got a good boot on him for some up and unders, and Ireland like mixing it up sometimes with some chips over the top or some crossfield kicks as well, just to really make a nuisance of themselves. So having Anthony Watson there as well as having a bit of experience at fullback as well, he'll understand that backfield cover, especially with James Lowe's left boot that he likes to sort of kick around you and get into that backfield and make a nuisance of himself. And then Freddie Stewart, again, another one, probably hoping for a little bit of a better game. His yellow card tackle on Josh Adams, even though I do feel Josh Adams made a bit of a meal out of his injury on the floor, and you shouldn't be doing that in World Rugby. The actual tackle by Freddie Stewart absolutely was going to end up being a yellow card, cost them 7 points and a man down. Doing that against a team that's performing better than Wales at the minute is the game. You do that in a World Cup, man, you're potentially knocked out of the World Cup. So can't be doing that. We'll be looking to have a better game. Overall, on paper, it's certainly a solid England team, but there's not that many changes from the game we saw against Wales. And they've had two rough old games against Wales, so I'll be a little bit more reserved talking about the team for this week. In the replacements then, Theo Dan, Joe Marler and Kyle Sinclair will be making up that front row. Now, someone dropped down, which I actually didn't think about when I was watching the game and doing the review. I don't think Theo Dan came onto the field. I saw someone left a comment on my review video saying, I can't believe he had 0 minutes. He's still only played that 41 minutes of international rugby, and going up against a Wales team that really wasn't firing on all cylinders. They still kept Jamie George on for the length of that game and didn't give Theo Dan a shot towards the end. They were down to 12 men at one point, so maybe it's worth keeping the more experienced players on, but having Theo Dan named in that World Cup squad and not giving him the game time feels like a little bit of a misstep. I would try and get him on relatively early. I hope they don't do to him what they did in the first game against Wales, where he got put on just as the game was turning, and it really felt like he couldn't really have a big impact into the game. I'm hoping he maybe even comes on at half time to give him some real experience versus top tier rugby internationals. In the replacement forwards alongside him then, Ollie Chesham and Jack Willis will be coming on at some point alongside of Danny Kerr, Marcus Smith and Ollie Lawrence as the replacement backs. Now I imagine Ollie Lawrence will come on directly for Manu Tuilagi, and Marcus Smith will come on at 10. There is always the other option they could do is bring on Ollie Lawrence on at 12, move Joe Marchant onto the wing and Elliot Daly moves to the 13 and bring Marcus Smith on at 10, just to shake up your entire backline and get more players, time experience playing with each other, because, Elliot Daly can shift around so much. There's some nice versatility in the team, and it'd be interesting to see how they're going to play this team out. I imagine, though, it would be a better switch to just move Ollie Lawrence in at 12, let Manu Tuilagi play a solid half, let Ollie Lawrence play a solid half, Marcus Smith on at 10, and see how your centres and fly halves are going to link up with each other, because currently I think that's still one of the bigger chinks in the armour, is how those partnerships are going to link up. So what do we think in terms of a score prediction? We're going into this one as a neutral. I'm really looking to this, and I think the Ireland team on paper looks massive. They're playing at home. They look like they're in a better position. They didn't play last week, so you could argue maybe they're a bit cold going into this game, but the England team last week played and weren't exactly firing on all cylinders. For me, I'm going to say an Ireland win, and I've got a feeling if the discipline doesn't improve for England, it could end up being a pretty big score. I'm going to say Ireland by 10. Is going to be my score prediction, guys. But make sure you drop down in the comment section your thoughts on the team along with your own score predictions. Make sure you're getting them up on the Super Brew, and we'll be reviewing everyone's picks on Monday. Like I said, there's already some other preview videos out on the channel for this game's weekend's worth of rugby, so make sure you go check those ones out too. I'll see you all next time, guys. Bye bye.